What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Knives of the Round Table. My name is Marco, and today we're going to be talking about Peña knives. Now, it's been a while since I did a brand overview, and it's because I don't do a brand overview on a brand that I don't feel like I have a good handle on. Right? You need to have tried a bunch of their knives. Try to get an idea of their entire range, their entire lineup before you can really do a brand overview, right? If you're gonna do a recommendation on a brand, then you better kind of know what you're talking about. The only one that I did without much of that really was Spyderco, and I think I covered the big ones in Spyderco, but Spyderco has a big lineup, right? So it's hard to do. But today we're going to be talking about Peña knives, and we're going to be talking about what the brand does right, what the brand could do better, what I think is the iconic knife in their lineup, if there is one, and what my recommendation would be if you've never tried a Peña knife, which one I would recommend. So, but let me show you what I've got here, and I'll do a brief. All of these knives are going to be reviewed. Some of them already have been. You can find the review of the Apache, and I'll link it. The review of the Raptor, you can find it as well. I think all of these four, I think you can find. I think the only one that I haven't done a review of is the Mula, and I will do that here in a little bit. But let me show you what we've got. So this one is the Peña Mula. It's a thumb stud only titanium frame lock, and here we go. This one is the Raptor. It is a front flipper in a Warncliffe hollow grind blade. This is the Mini Diesel, and this is a recurve compound grind flipper bolster lock. This one is a flipper drop point. I don't know if you want to call it buoy, not really buoy, but a drop point blade. And what we have here is kind of a sheep's foot reverse tanto front flipper. So as you can see, there's a plethora of options here. Whether you like smaller knives with a more traditional look, whether you want the more tactical look, whether you want a combination of the two, if you want a more, I don't know if I'm gonna call it minimalistic, but slim profile, larger carry like this one. So let's talk about what the brand does right. And I think what the brand does right is that he doesn't get set in a specific box, right? For example, he's done a series. Oh, before I get started, I wanted to say that all of these are X series knives. Okay, so you can see that it says X series right there. And what that means is that Enrique Pena, he's a custom knife maker, and he does a lot of custom knives. Most of the custom knives I've seen are like this ones, okay, modern traditional folders like this, or like that one, and I've been tempted. I've come close to buying one of his customs, but I just haven't. They're expensive, and I haven't found a colorway that I like, so I haven't quite pulled the trigger on it. But the X series of knives is Peña's collaboration with Riyadh, okay, or not collaboration, but he has Riyadh make his knives, and it's part of this trend of a lot of knife makers to be able to bring some of their designs up to the general public. Not everybody can afford a $1,000 custom, but a lot of people might be able to afford a more a production level blade like this one. So all of these have been made by Riyadh, and but designed by Enrique Pena. So what I think the brand does right is the the options that you have, that it's hard for me to recognize Peña's style because of his the breadth of the stuff that he can make. Okay, if you look at Spyderco, there's definitely a style to their knives, right? That you can recognize. It's very, you can see it. To Medford knives, there's a style there that you can pick out immediately. I don't think that's the case with a Peña knife. Certainly, I think you could recognize these. This is part of a series that he does, and he has, I believe, it's 4 different blade grinds. There's a buoy style kind of clip point. Uh, there's a there's another version of these knives. So you might be able to recognize these because there's a series of these style of the front flipper traditional, and they actually just came up with a larger version of the Apache. And there's a kickstop, it's one that has a flipper on these with in collaboration with Lee Williams. But it's hard to recognize his style because these two knives, they have nothing that makes them alike, right? You can't really say, oh yeah, that looks like that one, or these two, or there's just not a really recognizable style. The two closest blade grinds that I can maybe tell are these two, and even those, kind of close, but not really, right? There's a small recurve to this one. It's still just kind of a saber grind with a swedge on both, but still. And by the way, this one this is a Magnese modified, so the original Rhino doesn't have the kind of camo lasering on the titanium. Okay, it looks more like this side. Okay, just for FYI. So I think he does a really good job at stepping outside of the box and just coming up with a new and different design. Okay, so if you collect his knives, you can see that you have a lot of options here and a lot of diversity. And there's small knives and there's larger knives and there's very heavy knives and there's very light knives. And so what you're able to do with Peña knives is just pick, right? And even then, like this one, that blade grind comes in a bunch of different colors. This blade grind comes in a bunch of different colors. This one comes in the plain titanium, a couple different micartas. So there's a lot of options there. Another thing that I think they do right is their collaboration with Riyadh, right? I think Riyadh has been approached by so many knife makers, and I think over the course of many years, after working with Ramon Chavez, after working with Todd Begg, after working with Enrique Pena, the Riyadh makes knives for all of them. After working with all of them, I think they've honed their craft, if that makes any sense. They've gotten better and better and better, and the action that you get on a lot of these knives is just so smooth, so good. The detents are so crisp, and the closing is just really smooth. Even the front flippers, I'm not a huge front flipper guy, but these, they just fire so nicely, and oh, I got my finger on it. Huh, failed. Of course I was gonna fail. But anyways, the action on all of these are so good. The fit and finish on these are so good. And I just love when they use Riyadh to bring a custom into a production level, because I know I'm gonna get, I'm very content with the quality of these knives. I don't feel like I'm oh man, I wish that I had a custom because these are so. No, I feel very content at this level of quality. Would I like a custom? Well, maybe, you can see that I like his knives, but I am very content at this level. I think this is excellent quality. Another thing I think he does very good is his designs. I mean, I think every one of these knives is very, very attractive. I mean, I love the lines on the Rhino, and the ergonomics on it are so good. And the mini diesel is just a beautiful, beautiful knife. I think it looks so good. Even the Raptor, which I'm not a much of a Warncliffe guy, but this hollow grind of this Warncliffe style just looks so bad, so badass, that it's just the Damascene steel version of the Apache. The lines on these knives is just incredibly beautiful. I think they do very, very, very well in his designs. The materials are also very good. You get titanium on all of these. You got lock bar inserts on all of these. You have premium materials. These are all M390s, and this is Damascene steel. It's not Damascus, it's Damascene steel. So his materials are always on point. This one was the Knife Joe exclusive of the mini diesel with the I think it's Damascus pocket clip and the pivot collars. So I think the materials that he chooses are outstanding. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend the Peña knives lineup. Now, what I think they could do better, I think lock bar access is kind of a problem in many of them. The scales are usually the same size. There's no cutout on the show side of the scale to access the lock bar, and that makes these two really, really hard to get to. Okay, you really have to kind of squeeze your thumb in there to get in there. It's to a lesser extent, because the blade is a little bit thicker, you have kind of a little bit of the same problem with the mini diesel. Okay, I don't find that problem with the Rhino, and it's because in the Rhino you have kind of a cutout on this side, which makes the access a little bit better. It's not something that they did in the mini diesel. A little bit here, but it's still not very accessible. The Mula is a little bit better than these. I can access it a little bit better, but I think the lock bar access is something that they could do better. I think the design wants this finger groove on the mini diesel to be just a tad bit shallower to access the lock bar and to not match the height across. The same thing with these. I think the lock bar access on the Rhino is good. They could do it on here, and I recognize that that's kind of a design choice. If you make a finger groove here, it changes the aesthetics of the knife, but I am all for changing the aesthetics if it improves the functionality. And at least in my hands, I think the lock bar access on most of his knives, not all of them, this one's an exception, but most of them, is kind of problematic. I think it prevents me from using it as as a fidgety knife. And they're not meant to be fidgets, but I think fidget is one of the factors that I like to have in my knives, and these don't have it as much because of the lock bar access, even though they have tremendous action. Now, I think that's my only nitpick on what the brand could do better. Oh no, I have another one. On this one and this one, you do have a slight recurve right here and right here, and it is the smallest of all recurves known to man. It's just so small of a recurve that it doesn't really do anything, as in functionality of the knife, but it does make the sharpening a lot harder. Okay, because a lot of us sharpen with a fixed system, like a KME or a Hapstone or all of those. And when you try and sharpen with those systems, a recurve, you can mess up the knife. So you can sharpen these no problem, but they have just the smallest recurve, and I don't think you can a lot of people can't even tell that there's a recurve. And so if it's so slight, I wish that he would go do away with it. I don't think that it would change the aesthetics of the knife if you just had a flat from here to here and a flat from here to here. If you just had a flat in both of those locations instead of having the smallest recurve, it's so slight. Let me see if I can put a straight edge to it. I don't know if you can tell my finger underneath it, but it's just so very slight that I don't think for the headache it creates with sharpening, I don't think it's that noticeable of an aesthetic, and it's so slight that I don't think the cutting performance is increased because of that recurve. So I would hope that the recurve goes away on at least these two knives. Now, which one do I recommend? Well, is there an iconic knife in his lineup? And I would say no. Okay, I don't think there's one knife that everybody says, okay, Enrique Pena, and your thoughts go to one knife. I would probably say that this lineup is his most recognizable, but it's his lineup. It's not a specific knife, or at least I don't think, in my opinion. Maybe the clip point. If you force me to choose, I would say that the clip point version of the modern traditional front flipper. I think, it's probably his most recognizable, and a lot of his customs are in this vein right here. So, maybe, but as far as iconic, when you think of Spyderco, the Para-2, immediately you think that's the iconic knife. If you think of Benchmade, you think the 940, iconic knife. Hinderer, XM18, Chris Reeve, Savenza. And I don't think you can do that with Peña knives. I don't think anybody would. If you ask 10 guys, I don't think you'd get the same answer out of the 10 guys. I think you'd get a good 5 or 6 answers. But if you ask what's the iconic knife in the Chris Reeve lineup, I think you'd get a solid 10 out of 10 for the Savenza. Now, which one would I recommend? That is a really, really, really hard question, because I am gonna make a decision here, but I gotta tell you, obviously, if you like smaller modern traditionals, these front flippers is the way to go. I think I'd like the most the Apache. Is kind of the one that it looks wise, and there's a standard version of these. You don't have to get the Damasteel version of this. Now, I think for EDC, probably the Mula is the nicest, because it doesn't have a lot of people don't like the flipper tabs, and they like the more streamlined look of this. It's a really, really nice size. It comes in at just 3¼ inches, which is right at my sweet spot of knife. It's slim in this direction. It's not chunky. I think it's really nice EDC. If you like the more aggressive, tactical looking knives, I would say go with these two. But if I had to pick one to recommend to the general public overall, I would probably say the Mula. My personal favorite, I think, is the Mini Diesel. I just like the lines and the ergonomics and the looks, and I'm a sucker for a compound grind. But I think if I were to recommend to my audience or to a family member, I don't think I would start with this one. I think there's things here that are polarizing to some. So I would say I would recommend the Mula. I would go with this one. If you want to dip your toes into Peña knives, I would start with the Peña Mula. I think the action is phenomenal. In the thumb stud, I'm generally a flipper guy, but the action with this is just so crisp and so, it just fires with, it just goes. It's so good. I'm still breaking this one in, so I'm gonna do my review. I've had it for a little over a week, maybe, and no, probably more than that, 2 weeks at least. So I've carried it a couple of times, so I'm not ready to make my review on it, but I am ready to say that I think this is the one that I would recommend to most people. Well, guys, that is your brand overview of the Peña knives lineup. If you ever were wondering and you wanted to dip your toes, hopefully this was helpful to you. If it was, then like and subscribe, only if I earned it. Yeah, I never ask for a subscription at the beginning of the video. I feel like I need to earn your subscription. But if I did, then like and subscribe. Don't get notified. Nobody likes to get more emails. You know where to find me if you like my content. And until I see you at the next one, take care.